Chapter 10. Georgia pushed a stack of magazines aside and sat on the edge of her bed. She balanced Slappy on her knee. She worked her hand through the hole in the back of a sports jacket. Her fingers fumbled for the controls to his eyes and mouth. "Tell me, Slappy," she said, turning the dummy's head towards her. "Do you hear all the noise? What's all that barking and howling outside?" "It's raining cats and dogs," she made Slappy say in a high Mickey Mouse voice. The dummy's wooden jaws clicked loudly as Georgia pulled the controls. "Ha ha!" Stella groaned from the other side of the bedroom. "That's so funny I forgot to laugh." "Shut up, Stella," Georgia snapped. "You're pitiful," Stella sneered. "Go away," Georgia cried angrily. "If you don't want to hear me practice with Slappy, why are you in here? Why do you have to finger paint on my desk? Why can't you finger paint in your own room?" Stella leaned over the desk, rubbing her bright blue paint-covered hands across the paper in the front of her. "My room is very neat," she replied. "Your room is a total mess. I finger paint in your room because no one will ever notice if I smear paint around." Georgia sighed. "I'm going to clean my room this weekend. I know it's a mess." "Mom says she's buying me my own dummy," Stella said, pouring yellow paint on the paper and smearing over the blue with both hands. "No, she said she's buying me two dummies, brand new ones, not disgusting used ones." "Stella, you're such a total liar," Georgia muttered, shaking her head. "You really gotta stop making up stories all the time." "I don't make up stories," Stella protested. "Mom is really worried about you," Georgia continued. "Telling lies is such a sick thing." "You're sick," Stella shot back. Georgia turned to Slappy on her lap. "Do you know another word for liar?" she asked him. "Stella?" she made Slappy reply. Stella opened her mouth to say something, but the mother burst into the room. Mrs. Boonshoff stumbled over Georgia's rucksack on the floor. She grabbed the bookshelf to keep from falling. Several books, a box of computer disks, a rolled-up poster, and a stuffed panda toppled from the shelf and landed in a pile of dirty clothes. "Georgia, what are you doing now?" her mother demanded sharply. "Practicing with Slappy." "But you promised you'd clean up your pigsty," Mrs. Boonshoff cried, kicking at the tangled pile of jeans and t-shirts. "She can't. She's a pig," Stella chimed in. "You keep out of it," Mrs. Boonshoff snapped. "What are you doing in here, Stella? You've got blue finger paint all over George's desk." "Who cares?" Stella replied. She kept swirling her hands in the thick, gooey paint. "Georgia never uses her desk. She has to study on the floor because there's too much stuff piled on the desk." "Mom, look. I figured out how to make Slappy's eyes move," Georgia interrupted. She made the dummy's eyes slide from side to side. Mrs. Boonshoff sighed. "I'm really out of patience with you, Georgia. Please, I'm begging you, put that ugly thing away." Georgia hugged Slappy. "Don't call him ugly. You hurt his feelings, Mom." "Sick," Stella muttered, keeping her eyes glued to her finger painting. "Keep out of it," Mrs. Boonshoff repeated sharply. She stepped over the dirty clothing and several books and CD cases to get to Georgia's bed. "You know I don't like to nag, Georgia, but you've promised me 100 times you'd clean up this room, haven't you? Haven't you?" Georgia fiddled with Slappy's bow tie. "Well, after dinner, you said you'd come up here and clean up," her mother continued. "And now I find you sitting surrounded by junk, playing with that puppet." "It's not a puppet," Georgia insisted. "I just got him, Mom. I want to practice, you know. Work up a comedy act I can perform at school." "Work on your room instead," Mrs. Boonshoff replied. "I mean it this time, Georgia. You want to go to Allison's birthday party tomorrow night, right?" "Of course," Georgia exclaimed. "Well, unless this room is entirely clean and neat by tomorrow, you can't go." Georgia opened her mouth to protest. Mrs. Boonshoff raised a hand to signal for silence. "Not another word. If the room isn't clean, you'll stay at home." She made her way carefully back to the door. Then she turned to Stella. "You, out. Right now." Georgia can't clean up with you and here making it even messier. Fine, Stella groaned. No problem. She jumped up from the desk and marched out of the room, holding her paint-dripping hands in front of her. Stella, stop! You have to clean up your paints, Georgia cried. You can't just leave them all there. Stella giggled and vanished out the door. Georgia uttered an angry cry. She set Slappy down carefully against the headboard of her bed. Then she stood up and gazed at the mess. This will take all night, she muttered unhappily. Where do I start? Her eyes moved from the pile of dirty clothes to the sacks of books and magazines, to the blue and yellow fingerprint dripping wetly down the side of her desk. Keep it together, Georgia, she instructed herself, tearing at the sides of her brown hair. Don't lose it. Keep it together. You can do this. She cleaned for a while. She picked up a few things from the floor, but it was so boring. Yawning, she returned Slappy to her lap and tried a different, deeper voice for him. No, the new voice made her cough. I'm going to bed, she told the dummy sleepily. She sat him down on the floor. I know. I haven't finished cleaning up. I haven't really started, but I can do it in the morning. A few minutes later, Georgia called goodnight to her mother, turned off the light, and climbed to bed. Down on the floor, Slappy listened to Georgia's breathing. When it became soft and slow, he figured she was asleep. He sat up straight. He stretched his arms over his head. He climbed eagerly to his feet. Look out, everyone, he whispered. Here comes Slappy.